Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 396 for the 29th of Kislev in a regular year. We all know that hugs feel really good, right? So whether it's a hug from a friend who you haven't seen in a really long time, a hug from a loved one when you're in need, when you're going through a hard time, that hug just really helps you feel so much better. Or a hug from a spouse or other family member, just as a way of connecting, of bonding, of showing them how much you love them. So hugs feel great, right? There's actually been a scientific exploration into the science of hugging and what is happening there and why it feels so good. And it turns out that there are actually a good amount of feel-good hormones, as they're called, that are released when we hug. The most prominent of these hormones is the hormone known as oxytocin, which is known as the feel-good hormone and the connecting and bonding hormone. So that actually when you hug somebody, you actually produce hormones. Both of you produce hormones that make you feel closer to each other. Your body also releases dopamine and serotonin as well, which are also feel-good hormones. Dopamine allows you to feel kind of motivated and inspired. This is something we'll talk about further in the podcast. And serotonin, which is just that feeling of calmness, of goodness, just a good sense of being. This is all the amazing things that come about through hugging. As a side note, this could be a good way to kind of scientifically explain the precept of Shomer Nagia, the idea of a man and a woman not touching each other before marriage. Because what happens when you touch, what happens when you hug, is you actually feel closer to each other. You actually feel more bonded. So by avoiding hugging, avoiding touching during the dating period for somebody who wants to keep Torah and Mitzvos, this actually allows you to have a clear head so that you don't feel connected and bonded with somebody that is not right for you. Because because it is a very powerful thing. The power of touch, the power of hugging is so powerful. So now the thing about hugging that's so powerful, like think about this, the last time you hugged somebody, what were they wearing? How many layers of clothes were they wearing? So imagine let's say it was a really, really cold day and you're walking down the street and you're wearing many layers of clothing and, a few shirts and a sweater maybe and a scarf and a jacket and, all kinds of different clothing and you see your friend and your friend is also all bundled up in the same way. And you guys see each other, you haven't seen each other in a long time and you go and you hug one another. First of all, you'll notice that hugging actually makes you guys warmer, right? And secondly, the fact that you guys are wearing all these clothes, all these layers of clothing, does it create a disconnect between you two? No, right? You still get that hug in the fullest way. You still have those hormones released. You still have that connective bonding happening there. So this is exactly what we're going to be exploring today. But in this case, instead of talking about being hugged by a person, we're actually going to be talking about being hugged by God and how the way that we're hugged by God is through the clothes that he wears, which we started talking about already in the past couple of episodes, that the Torah and Mitzvos can be thought of as vehicles by which God clothed himself within to allow us to access him, to allow us to connect with him, just like you would connect with a person through their hug. So for context, today we're going to be concluding chapter 4 of Likkutei Amarim. And we've been talking about this whole thing of Torah and Mitzvos and about the garments of the soul, the garments of our godly soul through which we perform Torah and Mitzvos, the garments of thought, speech, and action. And so for today's section, the Alter Rebbe begins, and he says that since now we understand that the Torah and the Mitzvahs, that what they do is they clothe all of the 10 aspects of our soul and all of our 613 organs from head to toe. So this is what happens when we engage in Torah and Mitzvahs. Then what happens is that when we're engaged in this Torah and Mitzvahs, we become bonded with God himself, with the light of God, like truly the light of God, which encompasses us from our head to our feet. And through this understanding, we can now come to a deeper understanding of a few verses in Tehillim, which talk about our relationship to God and how God surrounds us. So one of them is from Tehillim chapter 18, verse 3, which says, "Tzuri echaseh bo," God is my rock in whom I take refuge. And the other one is from Tehillim chapter 5, verse 13, "Katzina ratzon te'atrenu." As with a shield, God will surround him. So meaning to say God's will and wisdom, which are clothed within the Torah and Mitzvahs, this is what we become attached to. This is what encompasses us, just like a physical kind of garment encompasses us. And now we can understand this idea that there's a teaching from Pirkei Avos, chapter 4, Mishnah 17, which teaches that 1 hour of repentance and good deeds in this world is better than the whole life of the world to come. Why? Because in the world to come, the world to come is a place of basking and enjoying the ray of the Shekhinah, which is an intellectual type of appreciation and pleasure, which sounds like a very, very high level, right? Like this level, like really basking in this ray of the Shekhinah, the ray of God, But the thing is to look at it specifically. We're specifically saying the ray of the Shekhinah. We're getting a radiance of the light of God in this higher place, because nobody can actually grasp God himself. But yet, where do we find that we are able to grasp God himself with all of his glory? This is not through thought, because thought is not something, as we mentioned, God is beyond our intellectual comprehension, but rather it's through the Torah and Mitzvahs in which God clothed himself. And so that the Torah and Mitzvahs God is one with the Torah and Mitzvahs. And even though the Torah is vested within physical objects, within very lowly physical objects, then this is where we can understand this analogy of the hug. So the Alter Rebbe gives this example of hugging a king, for example. So he says that if somebody goes and hugs a king, whether the king is wearing one garment or whether the king is wearing many garments, we know that the king's body is found within those garments. And so thus, we're hugging the king. We're not hugging the garments of the king. And so too, if the king embraces a person with his arm, and even though this arm that he's embracing him with is covered in many, many garments, we still say that it's like the king embraced him with his arm. It wasn't the garments that embraced him. So too, when we talk about God, when we say in Shir Shirim chapter 8, verse 3, "V'yamino techakbeni," God's arm embraced me, we know that it's God's actual arm that's embracing us. And what is this arm? What is this right arm? This is the Torah, because the Torah was given from the right side, because it's the aspect of chesed and water, which, chesed is this idea of giving, of flowing, of outpouring, and it's related also to water. And we already spoke about how Torah is likened to water as well. So it really is through Torah. This is really God's way of hugging us, actually hugging us, so that we can experience God's essence and not just a radiance from him. So that's the end of the section for today. So really, just to sum it up, this is the amazing thing about Torah and Mitzvahs that's really unique to Torah and Mitzvahs, that is beyond anything in the spiritual realms that the spiritual realms can experience. Because just like, maybe if you think about this again in terms of people, if you're talking to somebody, you're talking to your friends, and you're having an intellectual conversation, and you're kind of connecting on this intellectual level, and they're telling you about themselves, right? So you're getting a radiance of them. You're getting a sense of them. Maybe you're getting a lot of, a deeper understanding of them to a deeper level. But then you go and you hug them. And there's something about that hug that really is, you're connecting with them in a much more essential way than any kind of speaking can do. any kind of intellectual understanding can do. So this is the same idea with God, that when it comes to our relationship with God, if we want to connect with God on an essential level, then God actually clothed himself in the Torah and Mitzvos so that we can think of it as just clothing for him, so that we're hugging God. And the way that we access God is through this clothing, through the clothing of Torah and Mitzvos. So that's it for today. And we will continue tomorrow when we move on to a new chapter, chapter 5, and I'll speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.